and welcome back to this special episode of the What the Falk Sunderland Review podcast. Thankfully, Sunderland haven't been around this weekend to ruin most of our weekends, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to do it ourselves. We're back and we're going to have a little discussion about the season that we all want to forget, but we're going to make it all relive and remember first of all. So before we get started, I've the guys that we've got with me. First of all, I'll go in order of who I can see on my screen. Lee Armstrong's with us. Lee, how are you doing?
I'm all right, mate. Had a canny weekend. Nice, the sun's been out, chilling out. It's been all right. And as I said, Sunderland haven't ruined it, so all a plus in it.
Ross Black, well, you are looking worse for wear.
Very sunburned. The Sun won 1-0. And I'm really sunburned. Don't ever mention I'm really sunburned. I woke up looking up like what's them lollipops called? The pink and white ones, but that was half my body was pink and the other half was white. So yeah, but again, Sunderland didn't ruin the weekend, which was a nice positive.
Yeah, and finally, we've got the original host of the podcast.
You've cut out about 7 times, so for people who didn't hear that, it's Graham Falk. You know what? I think it sums up probably the season, doesn't it? The fact that I've just gone, bugger it, you just can all host it yourselves, and I'll just join and chat. I am okay. Like the season feels like ages ago, but I'm really pleased that it's not bled into this week. It was just like I was desperate for the season to end, which is an awful way to feel. But now it's over. Like, can kind of look at it a bit more objectively rather than just getting frustrated and apathetic with it. And then we're still going to be the next season, aren't we? So like we might as well just chew the fat on this and then get into next season at some point, but not just yet, please.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to next season yet. The summer's going to determine, I think, for me, how much I'm looking forward to it. But because we haven't got a lot of time, because you are tight and you don't pay for the subscription, I'll go around the room and just really ask, now that the season's over, what are your immediate reflections on the season that's just been and gone? Lee, I'll start with
you. One which started off with so much promise but ended up in so much disappointment. As I say, a lot of people have said, and I agree, I think the club just basically turned and said they weren't bothered come the beginning of February and just sacked it off. Where it does leave us to improve next season, we're kind of getting bloody worse, where you'd hope we wouldn't. But deflation was the word I'd use. Deflation.
Graham, I'll ask you the same question, and you're not allowed to use the word apathy.
I don't think I'm reinventing the wheel here by saying what I'm saying, but it just a season that didn't really need to happen, that didn't end disastrously because we didn't get relegated, but like if it was 3 or 4 games longer, it could have done. And I think, I was one of those only people probably that watched every goal that we scored that the club put out the other day, which I just thought like, what are you doing? And then found myself watching them and thought, okay, so they've wrote me in. And there comes a point in the season where Jack Clark scores a penalty against Millwall and then we just stop doing things. And there's like no real decent memories outside of, I think, a couple of good goals against Plymouth. And like Ekwa scored against West Brom, and I thought it went to adverts and it had already skipped to the next video because that was the last goal was scored. And I think that sort of sums it up. I just think, the season as a whole, I think it's something we said for about the last 6 weeks of the podcast, but it felt like a season where, maybe we wouldn't have got 6th, and I'm not saying like anything less than 6 would have been a disaster or worse, or we wouldn't have built on it. Technically, it wouldn't have been because we finished 6th, and to build on that, you need to be a bit higher. But like, I think the division got stronger, so I think a lot of people were aware of that, and a lot of people understood it. But I think if you look around sort of November, December time, even though we'd seemingly not scored as much as we had at the start of the season under Mowbray, I think a lot of us would have felt like, a top 10 finish would have been more than achievable. And you could have like maybe picked a few positives from that and said, well, the division was tougher and X, Y, and Z. And we had this and that and the other, these injuries, that injury, or whatever. Like, make of it what you will, but there's still something to build on there. This is not a disaster, but I just feel like the season would have went from like maybe not getting playoffs to then total disaster if it had been like 2 or 3 weeks longer. I honestly think if we had 2 games left, we could have been knackered because we were just awful. And I think a lot of it's down to the club and the way they acted on stuff. I found a complete arrogance from the club right from the off that they wouldn't learn from any of their mistakes, and it almost would have put pay to them. That game's 2 games longer. You honestly telling me you think we would have picked up enough points to stay with relegation? I don't know. And that's a sad indictment of just how far we dropped off, probably from about December time, give or take. So yeah, you've got to thank Michael Beale, haven't you, for those like 3 wins that he got. Just sad. I don't like a season ending and me being pleased with it. And I'm delighted it was ended. I kind of don't want to think about something for a while, but we have to do this. So
yeah, I think that's completely fair. I think if it did go on a few weeks longer, I agree, we'd have been in serious bother. I mean, we got beat. 3 teams went down. And we lost to Huddersfield twice. Lost to Birmingham once. Drew with Rotherham. There's not a lot of positive to take from that one. But how do you feel about it? The season as a whole, a quick reflection on it.
Very meh. Like, the season should have ended after Leeds at home, because after then it was just turgid. It was turgid to watch. It was everyone's mentioned that the club gave up, didn't they? They had no intention of fully going for it. They were quite happily treading water and hoping we could fluke away. But again, I think, as Graham mentioned, the arrogance. I'd argue it was also naivety, and probably borderline, I don't know, just negligence to think that we could still do it without a forward, without experience. And yeah, I think the club believed in the hype too much, their own hype of this whole philosophy where, yeah, all we're gonna do is play young players, and yeah, it was a disaster. And the only way anything good comes out of this season is as if they learn the lessons and they've finally seen what will happen if you do go too far and you don't get it right. So I'm just hoping that that's the lesson from it. But yeah, it was the last from January onwards, maybe even some of December. Like, it was purely pointless, wasn't it? Because we were just playing for the crack. Really, there was nothing on the line. The club knew we couldn't go up. The players knew we didn't have the squad to go up, and it was just treading water.
Yeah, definitely. My next point was actually going to be, where did the season do ill? But you and Graham have both touched on the December-January time, and it's been something I've personally been quite strongly opinionated on. For me, it was the day we sacked Tony Mowbray, and I've never really deviated away from that. But I think you, Graham, and Ross especially, and I don't know about you, Lee, you guys seem to have had the opinion it was more the appointment that was made after Tony Mowbray. I'm still convinced that it was just the sacking of Mowbray. He was getting the best out of a group of players, which overachieved last season because we did have some quality there. We had an outstanding loan player in Ahmad. We had a very good loan player at the start of the season in Sims that got us some goals. And obviously Ross Stewart, when he was fit, he scored. So we possibly did overachieve last year, but we did have some quality. Jack Clark and Roberts were outstanding last season. Well, season before last now, because the season's finished. But yeah, it just... Where do you think it did do? Was Tony Mowbray getting more out of these players than he should have been? Or are we where we should be anywhere?
No, I honestly think that we knackered ourselves. I think we're scunning Tony Mowbray a bit as well, didn't we? We didn't give him, he said it himself, the tools that he needed to do the job. And those games before Beale came in, we struggled to score goals, even though we dominated most games, like Plymouth away and Swansea away stick out. Didn't score 1 goal in those games, and we absolutely battered them. I just feel like the club got it wrong in the summer, and then they made it worse. I'm sure we'll go into like maybe signings we made, but like there was a really strong percentage of the players that we brought in that didn't improve anything, and we lost quite a bit. Like we lost Danny Bart, Pritchard halfway through the season. Diallo was always going to be a huge mess. And then, not a lot of the players really turned up for the full season. And probably that was aided by the fact that they didn't have our best players around them from last year or enough experience around them. I don't know if I think it was when Mowbray got sacked, but I do feel like, because I think me and Ross were on at the time saying like maybe he has hit a ceiling, maybe it's time to go. And as a fan, you sometimes think, well, if dominating games not scoring, there's no plan B. Is it that? And can you change it? But I'm pretty certain me and Ross at the time also said, well, they've got to have someone lined up. And it's quite clear they don't even have that person lined up now. Total lack of pre-planning, total failure in recruitment, bluff and bluster at points when we needed authority and planning. And essentially what you end up with is the season that Ross described before, a mess season. Don't get your recruitment right, don't get your planning right. And you can tell me as much as you want that the club have these what do they call them, like future-proof plans where they identify a head coach and they identify this player. If this player leaves, bollocks. And it's bollocks because the proof's in the pudding. They haven't replaced Tony Mowbray yet, and they've had two blokes in the hot seat, and they still seem to not be too sure who they're appointing. And they've had the amount of time that they've tried to appoint someone. Just I just think I think they've messed up a long way along the way, and they've messed up a lot. But I feel like they just made it gradually worse. You can have a bad recruitment, and if your manager's good enough, or you sack your manager and replace it with someone who's good, you can save your season. Danny Rowe, Cifuentes. But if you continuously keep making stupid mistakes that are like easily avoidable, it's just going to get worse and worse. And that's what Sunderland's season was, really.
Yeah, totally. Ross, how do you feel on that? Where did it all go wrong?
I think Graham touched on it right there, that I was under the impression that Mowbray had hit a ceiling, and I'm not going to be revisionist. I feel like he did with the squad we had, hit his ceiling. What we didn't know was that ceiling was very high for what we had, and we were probably more optimistic and gave probably the players and the quality we had more credit than they maybe deserved. And I believed with how we were sacked and how quick it was. I was like, right, they're going to have somebody in. And I genuinely believe they thought, oh, they'll get Will Stillney over here. And again, naivety, incompetence, whatever it is, they put all their eggs in this basket on getting Will Still. He didn't come off. And then they shit the bed and went, right, well, we just need to get somebody in here now. And obviously Michael Beale speaks Speakman's bollocks. And that's why he got the job, because they all felt this. It's that bollocks, like the talk rubbish. It's all this stuff. Like, I'm all for analytics and all that, you know what I mean? But they're clearly not implementing it, so don't speak like you are. You know what I mean? And I feel like that's one thing positive I'd say to come out of it is, myself included, I'll put it in there, I was very much for, well, they've done everything so far correctly. They've got us promoted from League One. They then got us in the playoffs to the Championship. So I was like, they know what they're doing. I'm not going to question them. I'm going to prove them. But now I'm like, right, I'm going to question everything they do, because I'll give them the benefit of the doubt if they get it right time and time again, which we did. But now, like, it's shit or bust this summer. Like, they've put themselves under this much pressure by being so, like, again, I keep going back to it. Is it naivety? Is it incompetence? Is it just gross negligence? It could be anything. But at the end of the day, we've suffered and we haven't improved. We've got worse. And all of the stuff they said they did, they've proved out to be total liars. And that's the main thing for me. And that's why this summer's massive, because they've got to gain that trust back in the fans. So I think it's very, very big. And again, Tony Mowbray, would he have got us in the playoffs? No, I don't think so. But we also wouldn't have petered out and put in some disgusting football and performances in.
Completely agree with that as well. Lee, I'm guessing you're just of the same opinion, so we'll move on with yours, because I don't think there's much more we can add. And I feel like for the first 10...
how much of a poo can you polish on a podcast? Oh, let me just get that poo and clap it in my hands. Oh, it's splattered in my face. Oh, no.
I mean, just quickly, when you touch about the arrogance of Speakman, without trying to come down too hard, at the end of last season, I think it was within 2 or 3 days, he came out and done an interview on the club website and said how right they got it, how well they're going to kick on. And he's happy to take all the plaudits and credit, and he knows the positive comments were coming. But there's been nought since the season ended. So I think that speaks volumes about him as a man. But that's just my opinion.
He's taking his time just getting more obsessed with progression, Brad. He's just sitting there going, I would talk, but like the progression's just seething and soaring through my veins that I just need to just ooze it up a little bit. Yeah, agree. Agree.
To be honest, I'd keep particularly quiet if I was Christian Speakman, considering Chanzavy, who's an absolute nutcase, managed to replace his manager more adequately than we did twice.
It's crazy, isn't it? Say what you like about Chanzavy, though, just quickly. He's slapped a good price tag on his head, hasn't he? I think he's done the same with Steve Bruce. And so no matter how much of an idiot he is running a football club, he put some ridiculous prices on his manager's head. And fair play to him, because I think there's a lot of fanciers for Danny Rowe, but that's for another podcast, really. So I think we've been a bit too negative for the first 20 minutes, so we'll go with a little bit of positivity if we can. And I'm going to start with you, Lee. I want to know your player of the season and why.
Mine, I would go with Dan Neil. Because he is a brilliant footballer and he's matured so much from last season. Like, if you look at like the season before last, if we're classing like last season is just gone, is that he'd make stupid mistakes on the edge of his own box, he'd pick up stupid yellow cards due to them mistakes. But I think this season matured into a proper like a midfielder. It showed when he was injured for the last 3 weeks of the season, our midfield was non-existent, and it shows all season he's been doing the job of 3 players. He's been doing the job of number 6 and number 8 because he's literally carried the midfield through the whole season. So it didn't surprise me at all when we went to absolute pot when he wasn't there. And it showed how important he is to the football club. And if he does go, I think he is a harder player to replace than Jack Clark.
Yeah, I would actually agree with that one. But I don't think he will go. I think I said in the pod a few weeks ago, I think Speakman's going to say he's now our experienced midfielder and give him the captain's armband. Now,
I agree.
I'm all for giving him the captain's armband, but he ain't the most experienced because he's played for the best part of maybe 50 games of his professional career, has been the most experienced. He needs someone in there for me just to bring him on that extra level. But we'll wait and see. Graham, who's your player of the season and why?
Mason Burstow. Because I just think, like, I've never had a player wow me as much as he did this season. Maybe not on the positive, but a wow's a wow, isn't it? No, I think I'd probably agree with Lee on that one, to be honest. I think for me, do you know when you look through a team and you go like, right, who's had a good game, who's had a bad game, who's had like drop-offs, who's like Dan Neil maybe had 1 or 2 poor games at points. But for me, Daniel never really had a bad game. Not really. Jack Clark's probably really unlucky not to get my player of the year, but I think Daniel was actually really good all season. Like, really good. And I can understand why there's top Premier League clubs that are supposed to be looking at him. I hope to stop. And if they're listening, you shite. It's Mason Burstow that you want. But yeah, I thought Daniel had a very good season in a very drab season, as we touched on before. And if not that, you've got to say maybe Jack Clark. I saw a few people mention Trey Hume. I love Trey Hume. I've got to be honest. I really love him, but I thought he was honking towards the end of the season, like a lot of the players, so he wouldn't be in the mention for me. I thought Ballard had a decent enough season. But for me, there was only one man that was like consistently good, give or take 1 or 2 games in a 46-game season. And for me, that's the man that's so good they named him twice, Daniel Neil.
Yeah. Ross, are you going to go for the clean sweep, or have you got someone else in mind?
As much as I think Daniel's had a great season, I think it's got to be Jack Clark. He basically carried the team before his injury. We would have been relegated by Christmas if it wasn't for him. And sometimes it would be terrible in a game. Like Rotherham away, we were awful. He got the goal. There's just so many times he made something out of absolutely nothing, and he literally had to drag us through so much on his own. And yeah, I think, again, I don't think he's been great since he came back from his injury, but I probably think that if we were in a better position, he wouldn't have even been brought back that quickly given the injury that he had. But yeah, I do think that's probably the last we've seen of him in the red and white shirt, and the way he went off against Sheffield Wednesday to be subbed off like that. I feel like that was him, the club's way of saying, like, cheers, Jack, here's your round of applause, and he is hopefully. But I'd say the going rate for a top championship winger, I'm sure Leeds sell one of them, Bournemouth, I think it was, for 20 odd million. So yeah, I feel like it'll be 16 to 20 million we'll get for him, and that'll get us 10 Ecuadorian wonder kids to play for the under-21s.
Yeah, I think you're right, especially with the value of Jack Clark, because this season I can't see teams going out and spending money like they have been in the past, because there's that much scrutiny on financial fair play. They're going to be shitting themselves. There's two teams that very nearly got relegated in the Premier League this season due to losing points for spending silly money. But that comes at a detriment to us, because we're not going to get what I think we're all dreaming of if Jack Clark was to go, which is a shame. But yeah, I mean, for me, my player of the season is Dan Ballard, because I think when he plays, I just think he's an outstanding centre-half. And when he was missing, I think it was the start of the season, or last season, when Mowbray kept saying, I keep seeing Dan Ballard around the place. He's just a giant. I can't wait to get him back in. And I just think we look so much better when he's in the team. But yeah, I think there's a shout for every single one that we've mentioned.
I cannot believe you've totally overlooked Jack Clark's replacement, Romain Mundle. I mean, completely flipped the season in January. I mean, unplayable at points.
So just quickly jump in. We're on about clubs in the Premier League maybe tightening the purse strings and all that. What will be interesting is obviously Lazio were given a credible, like they were definitely interested, and top 5 in Italy and the Champions League this year, and they're fighting for 5th position. So they might have Champions League money to throw at it. So that might be something we got to look out for as well.
Yeah, and personally, I think Jack will just want to play in the Premier League. Can't see him really wanting to go to Italy, but I think one young player that he's went abroad and shown that he can flourish is Bellingham, and you might see an influx of young English players with decent talent. Maybe he's going abroad to further their career. We'll just have to wait and see. It's a funny one, this one, because when you mention Young Player of the Year, you can literally go through the whole squad again. So I'm just asking now, your second best player of this season, because Young Player of the Year is no longer an award at Sunderland. I'll start with Ross this time.
That is a tough one. But I'm going to say Job, purely because I think he gets very overlooked his age. He's still an 18-year-old kid playing his first full season of men's football, and I'm sure he was close to double figures goals-wise. And he was definitely he really did produce some great moments for us. He was inconsistent, which I think was purely based on the fact that, again, same with Callum Doyle, same with so many, these young lads need protected and they need to be looked after, because they can't play these games at the intensity of this level consistently, because it ruins them. And once again, we flogged them. And you could tell by the end of the season, he was so pleased to have a couple of weeks off. Like, he looked like he needed to join the union. He was fucked. He was, honestly, the working hours he was getting for his age were ridiculous.
What do they call the guy who runs a union again? I've got to do Mick. Mick. Oh, what's his name, man? Mick something. He'd be raging, be fuming. Young Job has been asked to work long hours every weekend without any rest, and he gets to have to do every single job. He's got to do the defensive work, the forward work. He's expected to score the goals, stop the goals, and I tell you what, he's not getting paid any extra.
It would have done him some good, because he'd have probably been advised to go on strike, and it would have given him a bit of a break.
Valid.
You're not wrong. But again, though, you mentioned the positions he had to play. Like, he never really got a consistent run in one position in the team, so he couldn't exactly grow into position, and I think that worked against him as well. Like, one week he'd be up front, the next week he'd be playing in the 10, the next week he'd be playing as an 8, and it's like, what's he meant to do? You know what I mean? How's he meant to get consistency in his game if he's not playing in the positions he's used to? You know what I mean? And again, he went through spells where I think he's done some brilliant stuff, like that goal. He wasn't even playing well, but that goal at Southampton away, like, that's just top draw. You know what I mean? And I feel like a good rest next year, he could really crack on even more. And to be honest, I think Job could be one who leaves, especially if things change higher up, because we all know how big Speakman was on getting him here with a Birmingham connection. And Dodds, he spoke quite highly about Dodds' his coach. So if they leave and rumoured interested clubs from Europe, like, Lazio, another one they mentioned, obviously the Dortmund link's always going to be there, etc. And then, I think, to be honest, that could be a way around how we get money in without losing, you'd say, your big top guys like Clark and Neil, as if somebody takes a gamble on Job purely, one, because they know he's so young and he's probably worth a gamble, but two, the Bellingham name sells, doesn't it, these days? Let's not be daft. And it'd be interesting, but I really do think that if he stays with us, he'll has a good rest and a proper pre-season and get a coach in who uses him wisely and finds his best position. And there's so much untapped potential there.
Yeah, definitely. I hope he doesn't go, because we've seen him in his first full season and we've seen them inconsistencies. I would like to see him have the opportunity with us to be learning from them mistakes and the inconsistencies he has shown. Same as when you mentioned Dan Neil last season. We've seen the better side of him. So I do hope he stays. Lee, who's your thoughts on the young player of the year?
I think I'm going to pinch it from Graham, but it's got to be Chris Rigg, isn't it? He's emergence into the first team and 16 years of age, and he does not look out of place. It just shows how good he is at this age. Shows maturity of a lad who's 26, never mind 16. Come up with some goals as well. I know it didn't really matter in the long run, but he got the equaliser in the cup against Crewe in his first start. He's the 5th goal against Southampton. He also scored against Blackburn as well. It's like, next season, if it was me and if he was still around, I think you've got to build a team around him. And he's got to be one of the first names in the team sheet week in, week out, because that's the next stage of his development. And if we don't, we won't see him in a Sunderland shirt for much longer, because the kid's ready to play first team football, whether it be at Sunderland or somewhere else. But it's got to be Riggy. I think everyone knew that he could be his breakthrough season. I think he's mentioned it on the prediction show before the start of the season. He'd be the breakthrough act, and he's proved everybody right. And he shows why every single club, every single top club in the world is watching him, because literally at the 16 years of age, he's a brilliant footballer.
Yeah, 100%. And we did mention him on the pre-season predictions, which we were 100% correct on most of them. Graham, has Lee nicked yours, or?
No, probably not, to be honest. I know he's not everyone's favourite player, but I'm a real big fan of Job. I've said it before. The amount of goals the kid scored and the responsibility he tried to take on at times, which, didn't really work because he shouldn't be taking on responsibility. I think that affected his game. But I think just on paper, like, if anyone like him or Chris Rigg comes to obviously Rigg's come to our academy, but if anyone had produced the numbers Job had produced in a season where, let's be honest, the club hasn't really performed that well, and he'd done so many different positions, would be absolutely buzzing about him. I don't think I've seen a player that age perform to quite the levels that Job sometimes can, and he does falter. Sometimes he can be completely anonymous, but he should be allowed to do that, because he's so important for us because of the role that he's been asked to play. That's where the problem comes in. But for me, the amount of goals Job has got, the kind of role that he played in the season, even when it looked like we might have finished higher than fucking 16th, I think it's got to be Job. But I know he's not everyone's favourite player, but I really like Job, and I think his numbers this season are excellent.
Yeah, I think we've been big fans of Job all season, and we have given criticism. Don't get me wrong, we've criticised every player, but I think under Mowbray especially, I think Job excelled. But that was early in his Sunderland career, wasn't it? And we were doing well, the team was doing well, and I think that's where we're seeing the best out of Job. It was when the going was getting tough, and we were just shoehorning him into any position to try and get something going. Is when the inconsistency started, and that comes back to complete incompetencies of managing a young player like that, which is a shame.
We'll talk about players that haven't had good seasons. Like, it's probably quite easy to forget this, but I just want to jump in quickly, Brad, with this. I think for me, the player of the year would have quite comfortably been Niall Huggins had he not had the bad luck to get the injury he had. But on the flip side, it meant he didn't have to deal with Michael Beale that much. So maybe he sees it as a positive. Who knows? You've got to take these positives, haven't you, and the silver linings when terrible injuries happen like that. But I thought Huggins was excellent. Don't think he had a bad game. I think he looked better than the player I actually thought he was. And I think if he was fit all season, Huggins would have won that award quite comfortably.
Yeah, I think there was a 6-game run where week in, week out, we were saying who was our best player, and we're saying Huggins. He was outstanding. But yeah, I mean, we've had the positives now. Now there's an even bigger list you can choose from. The most disappointing player this season. Now I'm going to kick this one off with my favourite. My favourite? Nah, I'm going to say Pierre Ekwa. And that's because ultimately I wrote him off from the start. He showed really his potential was towards the back end of last season when we went into the playoffs. And then the game against Luton, he was outstanding. First few games this season, yeah, looked steady. He got that dead leg, and he's never been the same since. And I just don't rate him anymore. And I don't want to write players off at all because they are young. But for me, he's now had a full season. If anything, he's got worse. Where do we go with him? But Graham, who was your most disappointing this season? I know there's a few candidates.
Ekwa, 100%. I echo what you said there. I was really disappointed with him this season. I don't feel that he offers enough at all. And people say, well, you know, X, Y, and Z, he's only played a certain amount of games. Okay, that's maybe a point. People also say maybe he's not playing in his right position. Okay. But for me, I just think he lacks energy. And that's something that's really hard to teach. And really disappointing because the kid's obviously got a lot of talent. But if I'm going to pick somebody else, I think based on what I've seen in pre-season, he didn't score a goal. That's summed up in it.
Yeah, as a striker coming in not to score a goal is pretty bad. Lee, what about you?
Yeah, for me, Patrick Roberts. He looked last season. I thought it was your favourite thing to see is like when him and Ahmad won the ball, it was like 2 year 11 kids playing against a bunch of year 7s, but he literally all season looked absolutely lost without him. And when last season, he would occasionally create something out of nothing by himself. This season was just nothing. I think it's summed up. The perfect chance to get a goal this season. The last day against Sheffield Wednesday, ballooned a shot over the bar from like 6 yards, and everyone went, "Ah, for fuck's sake, that's why he's been shit all season." But regardless of his injuries, whenever he's played, he's been poor, absolutely poor. And a player who's been getting a lot of criticism, outscored and out of system, and Abdullah Bar. So it shows how bad of a season Patrick Roberts has had.
Yeah, can you imagine the uproar if Barr had the season Roberts would have had this season?
Aye, he would have been drawn out of the football club in January. But we wouldn't have made it past the January transfer window if Abdullah Bar was playing as badly as Patrick Roberts. But because Patrick Roberts gets a bit of a leeway.
It's starting to look like the 5 million Southampton were willing to pay for him would have probably been a decent deal for us, really, wouldn't it?
I'm not writing him off yet. I like Patrick Roberts. I just think he's been poor, but I think when he started looking really bad, people need to remember that he was coming off the back of a pretty lengthy injury, playing for A, Michael Beale, and then B, Mike Dodds. Have some sympathy.
Yeah, there is that side as well. And look, Roberts, he's got good pedigree, hasn't he? He's came through good academies. He's been at good teams, so there is a player there, and we've seen it firsthand as well. Not just in League One, but in the Championship last year. So, look, yeah, he hasn't had the best season, but is there any player in that team where I can look at and go, for how poor you were this season, I actually have confidence in your ability that you can get it right next season? And I think Roberts is one that would maybe stand out. Ross, who's disappointed you the most this season?
All of the names. But again, Roberts been terrible. Barr did nothing. All of the strikers like Mason Burstow, Hamir, you could go on. But I'm going to go a bit left field and say someone like Bradley Dack, because what a waste he was. Like, he did, even when he was allegedly fit, he was as fat as me at times on that pitch. And he made more appearances.
Ross, that's not fair to Brad Dack. That's not fair. You're much fatter.
Like the gut.
There's only room for one fat Brad at Sunderland AFC, and that's me.
And end of the day, he made more appearances on loose women than he did playing for Sunderland. So, yeah, that kind of sums up Bradley Dack. Fucking get him gone, please.
Yeah, I wouldn't even wait till the 1st of June. I'd just let him go now. And if rumours are to be true as well, I think I've seen something this week that he's been linked with Birmingham City. I could never have seen that one coming. So, yeah. We'll move on to one more, then I think we'll have a quick break. But just quickly, what was your goal of the season, Graham?
Niall Huggins, Watford.
Yeah, great finish, wasn't it? Just that, I think that goal summed up how good of a player he was. Picked it up deep, ran at them, and it was a great finish.
Great goal.
Ross, what about
you? Bellingham, away to Joe Bellingham, away to Southampton, just unbelievable technique, and at the time to bring about a 2-2 in front of their way, and just outstanding.
And finally, Lee?
Mason Burstow's tap in against Stoke at home that he did his best to miss. I mean, no, seriously, Niall Huggins against Watford at home was outstanding. I think coming to the point, one of the lads that's next to me just stood there with his hands in his head. He didn't expect it.
Lush, great goal. So, Brad, we're going to take a quick break. I've took over hosting duties. It's Brad has a bad signal. Beautiful face, bad signal. Just one of those things. But we're going to pop a quick break. We'll pop back and chat a bit more about the season that we'd rather not chat about. Hello and welcome back to I couldn't even give the hosting job away because people can't get their internet sorted. So even when I give it away, it just comes back like a fucking boomerang. But I better not throw it to Brad since his internet's dead. He's in Milton Keynes as well, literally a city that was like built to be a cool city or something. I don't know what it's built to do. I know it's got TGI Fridays at the stadium. Ross, what was your least favourite game of the season?
Oh, fucking hell. How long we got? That's a tough one, that.
About 10 minutes.
Jesus. That's a tough one. But it might sound daft because we didn't actually lose the game. But Rotherham away, because it showed how much we'd regressed in such a short space of time that Rotherham, who literally were losing every week, pushed us to the brink where we needed a deflected goal just to get a point. And I think me and Graham did a review show after them. We were talking about it, and we were just like, "Wow, that was shit."
We got grief for that.
For saying how shit it was. Yeah.
We got grief saying that people saying we were dead negative and that. Oh, give Bill a chance. No.
A point on the road. Fuck me. Yeah, a point on the road where everyone else, I think, apart from us and two relegated teams, got none. But yeah, it was again. We didn't get beat, but we might as well have.
For me, I don't want to say it. Those worst performances. Do I say this? The Mags. Hate it. Hate getting beat off them. Sort of expected it. The money they have, the quality they have in the team, the quality we didn't have was always likely to happen. But the way and the manner in which we surrendered it, like that will always piss me off. And I don't just mean surrendering on the pitch. Like the whole 3 weeks before, the 3 weeks afterwards, that period, I can accept getting beat. I can accept getting beat off anyone. As a Sunderland fan, it's part and parcel of something that we've all got a character to, gallows humour. Like, there's not many teams or supporters that I've seen their club get relegated twice. And I'm not saying like I'm exclusive in that. I'm sure there's plenty of teams you can mention, but there's not many. So getting beaten, being absolutely crap at football is something that I can accept. Kind of blindly accepting it and everything that went on that I've probably mentioned, I feel like on every podcast since, and I should probably, people thinking I should let go of it. I cannot forgive that. And then the way that we just surrendered on the pitch in the same manner. It's just, nah, not for me. I would have rather got beat 100-0 and have a go. And we just didn't. And I also think that's the point when I snapped with Ekwa, when he just like ran into whoever it was, Anthony Gordon or something, and just went, shit, ran into him, just give him the ball, whoops, just killed the game on the 46th minute, like totally destroyed it. I don't want it to be my least favourite game, and it wasn't just because of what happened on the pitch, but genuinely could have never not been there, but I wish I'd never gone. It's like a really bad memory for me.
Yeah. Said our bellies tickled, didn't we? And ultimately, was appalling.
Could have had our heads taken off, so, got to think quite lucky in some senses.
My least favourite game, Stoke winning when we beat Stoke at home because they gave Michael Beale another week. But no, really, Michael Beale's first game, because the atmosphere was appalling, toxic. No one wanted him. And we just let Coventry come and do us in our own backyard. And
first and foremost, I have to come out and apologise to the fans for the performance today.
Did you know your Cockney sounds Australian?
Well, I was going to write on my burner account, but you can't quite get the accent. Like,
yeah, I would definitely say I think the Coventry game, because at that point I thought, yeah, our season's done. But that was also me because I'm a big Tony Mowbray lover. So I never wanted him gone. I didn't want Beale in. And it just sort of felt like, yeah, we're going backwards here, because it was shocking. The whole build-up coming out the tunnel, it was just no one got behind Beale from the start. And also, I touched on Huggins earlier. That was the game he got his injury as well. We haven't seen him since. So everything about that day for me was probably the worst day of the season.
I genuinely thought you were going to say the worst day of my life. I was like, how am I? Like, not bad. Lee, you've got so many choices. Like, so many. Like, you can go to Blackburn, you can go Stoke away, you can go to any of the times we got beat off, relegation threatened, and then relegated Huddersfield. You've got getting beat off your biggest rivals. You've got losing the first.
He's got 25 games he can pick from, Graham.
You've got so many you can pick. But what is your crowning moment of shite?
To me, obviously now the obvious one is Blackburn home, but me Hull at home, because we literally spent 95 minutes doing fuck all. We did nout. And the only way that it got a chuckle out of us, because I remember, I think at one point in the first half, Pritchard's pressing their defence and Michael Beale. It shows how, I think it was the first bit of discontent between the team and Michael Beale. When Beale's going press, and Pritchard just turns over and goes, "What the fuck do you think I'm doing?" Which gives a little bit of a chuckle, but we spent 95 minutes doing absolutely nothing. And they scored a deflected goal. Then Bale did an out, and it was just an utter waste of an hour and a half of my life. Lucky I didn't go. I watched it on the telly.
We talked about Mick Lynch before and the union. And the irony is, we talked about Job going to the union to go on strike. It turned out that's the game that sent Pritchard to the union for him to go on strike. And I fully support him in it. Like, I back him, up the workers, as I always say, especially in the situation when your boss is Michael Beale. It hasn't been that awful compared to some seasons. I mean, it's in some ways kind of mirrored some really awful seasons, but ultimately, like, it was a comfortably safe at the end season. And I know I said before if it was 2 or 3 games longer, but it wasn't. Like, it's kind of like saying, like, if like the sky was pink, it would live in Barbie world or whatever. I don't know. It's a terrible analogy, but you get my point. There was some good parts of it. Most of them came at the start. I'll go back to you, Ross, since I've now been given the poison chalice of hosting this podcast again. What was your favourite game this season?
Favourite game? Oh.
Down, losing my favourite game.
This literally sums up the season, though, that how many choices we had for worst game. Yeah, I'm having to seriously think about my favourite. And it's like, not so sure. But I'm going to go with Sheffield Wednesday away. I really, Friday night, we were fantastic. We played them off the park. And I really thought that, like, oh yeah, we've got a chance here. Like, so yeah, let's them were the days, weren't they? Fucking hell.
We basically did the Sheffield, because Sheffield were awful, like absolutely awful. They were there to be absolutely smashed, but we would normally hiccup at that point, and we looked like a team that was like, we looked like what a team would normally do to us when we're in that state, and we just turned up and we're like, pfft.
When we scored from a set piece, it was like, oh my god, what a day! But again, that just shows how much we regressed when you look at that game, how good we were, and then what Sheffield Wednesday did to us on the last day. Like, I know they improved a lot, but Jesus Christ, man. Worlds apart. Absolutely worlds apart.
I think for me, the one game that really sticks out, everything went right. Even Dak scored. Southampton at home, I thought we were absolutely class in like the first minute. And I felt genuinely very happy. I thought we were, off the top of my head, ironically, a Beale game. I thought we were really good in the second half against Plymouth. I thought we looked really good in that game. But Sheffield away sticks out a lot. Norwich at home, I thought we were good against Birmingham as well. When you consider that we had to put Triantis and Seal in defence that day. And Leeds at home really actually sticks out, but for like totally separate reasons. It was kind of more maybe what we got used to towards the end of the season without being that good defensively, but it was sitting back and then hitting them on the counter. But it was like what Dodds tried to do for the rest of the season and then really failed at it. That was a night it kind of worked. And I thought we were really good against West Brom at home. So there was bright moments, but I think pretty much all of those games fell in the start of the season. Like QPR away was good as well. That was start of the season. We responded really well to them being down to 10 men and just battered them. Colback got sent off and that's all great. But for me to say anything other than Southampton, who were a very good football side, getting absolutely slaughtered by us, and Pierre Ek were looking like, I don't know, a really good midfielder. It was just a really good day. Sadly, not enough of them. Brad, what was your game of the season? Do you deviate from Southampton? I think it's hard to me.
Yeah, Southampton's always going to stand out in a season like that, isn't it? especially where they ended up and we ended up. But you touched on QPR, and it's 2 away games that stand out for me. Was QPR was one, but I think Blackburn away as well. Thought we played really well that night because at the time, got to remember Blackburn were there and thereabouts last season as well, and it wasn't too long into the season. They still looked okay, but we went to their place, and I think we looked really good. The only problem with that night, the one thing about that night was it was the debut of the yellow shirts, and they decided to put white writing on. So even then, I can find a negative. But yeah, I'd go with Blackburn or QPR for me, because I do think we looked really good them games.
Lee, do you deviate from Southampton?
It's obviously sticks out, but I was just going to pick QPR away for the simple fact, if you look at the away games that preceded that, Swansea away, the Millwall away, Plymouth away, games where we couldn't break teams down. And obviously we went 1-0 down in that game as well. And obviously when Kovac got sent off, Sunderland 3 weeks later wouldn't have gotten a 3-1 win out of that game. We might have struggled to get a draw, if anything else. But as you say, and now they were under a poor manager in Gareth Haynes, but we absolutely battered them that day. And they couldn't live with us. It could have been 6 or 7, and they wouldn't have been able to argue with it. Especially like Hamid getting a header. That's the one that sticks out for me. QPR away, other than Southampton.
Yeah, it was. There was parts of the season, like at the start, that like actually went really, really well. Got sort of 2 more things that I want to do, and then I kind of just want to like think about the Euros maybe. We're going to go through, well, Brad had planned this whole episode, should I say, but with the internet being a shambles in Milton Keynes, we will instead go through every player we signed this season and whether we think they are a hit or a miss. No explanation, I just want a hit or miss. You can have a maybe as well if you want. And then we will do who we want as our choice of manager, because we still don't have one. So I'll start with you, Ross. I'll go through each player. You can go hit, miss, or maybe. So Nectarios Triantis.
Maybe in the future. Sure, he was all right when he played against Birmingham.
Job.
Hit.
Sealt.
Maybe. Showed good promises, but also had a few stingers.
That.
Miss.
Mayenda.
Miss.
Bishop.
Total meh.
Rusin.
Miss. Miss, unfortunately.
Hembele.
Miss. Had one good game. Maybe. Showed spells in the start, then did nothing.
Wait for this one. Leo Yelda.
One of the worst players I've ever seen in some shirt.
Yeah, same.
Has he died? Right? Sorry to be so blunt about that, because he was playing consecutively. He was playing like consistently, right, when we signed him. Sorry to go off on a tangent. And then he got dropped to the bench once. He came back in. I can't remember who it was against. And then he's been on no training pictures, no training videos, not for the 23s. Never seen again. Like, what have they done?
He passed his driving test the other weekend. Someone was like, it's the only thing he's passed since he's been successfully, which I thought was probably pretty accurate. Mundell, Ross, is your last one.
Total miss.
Yeah, I mean, maybe hard to judge, I suppose, but like when I watch him, I just go, "You are David Bellion in 2024."
It's like watching a dog chase a balloon, isn't he?
Yeah, I don't quite see that at the minute. I hope he proves me wrong. I really do. For me, probably all of them misses apart from Job, and I think Sealt will come good. And I would be really surprised, Brad, and really surprised, Lee, if I need to even ask you the same question. Are you pretty much, I'll ask Lee first, is there any you disagree with there?
The only one I would maybe disagree with is my index. I don't think he was afforded the opportunities as the other three were.
He's got the best chant. Have you heard his chant?
I have.
It's good, isn't it?
So I'd put him down as a maybe just for the fact I only think I've seen him twice, possibly in a Sunderland shirt. Like decent minutes anyway. So I'd put him down as a maybe, but the rest I totally agree with.
Started against Huddersfield.
What's worth pointing out is I've said my ender because purely based on the fact that Hibs are absolutely shocking.
Right.
And he can't even get off the bench for them. And at least Trantis has actually showed himself. To be fair, I think Trantis has played well as a CDM there rather than a centre half. Or at least had games there where he did all right. So
the best thing Trantis has done all season is like knock two of his own players out playing for Hibs.
That is unbelievable.
My heart.
Point blank rate, just knockout.
Brad, do you have any deviations on the names I mentioned there?
Maybe it's one from when Ross said maybe. On our sheesh, I would say maybe it's a hit because I actually think he looks quite good.
In what
and
sense?
I basically cost us against Ipswich, but they're a Premier League side. I do like our sheesh.
When you say he looks good, though, do you mean like as in like his general makeup, like an attractive man, or because I'm struggling to see the talent?
I just think there's a player there, and I do think with a decent pre-season, and yeah, I can see him. Maybe he's doing something next year. So actually, I'm going to agree with us then because I'm not confident. Maybe. There's one that did you mention him?
Who?
And Harry Styles.
Oh no, I didn't. Well, to be honest, no. I can't be bothered.
See, I'm
sign of the times
on the fence with him because
Fuck off.
when he actually moved into midfield, I think he looked okay in midfield, but he was just never played in the right position. So I don't know. I doubt we'll keep. We'll probably hit the amount of games he needed to play him.
In the words of me granddad, he's cacky. Absolute cack. Like,
wow.
No, nah, I'm not having it. I'm not having it with Callum Styles. Like, I cannot believe he's going to be going to Euros. Honestly, I can't. It's like he's rubbish. Like, I've like, I think I got to a point where like a lot of them where it was like March, and I was like, no, how like, there's loads of things up above, and now that the season's ended, I'm just like, nah, I don't want any of this anymore. I've had enough. I'm nearly 40. I'm not standing for any shite. It's like, do you know when like your uncle hits that age or your dad hits that age and suddenly they stop being like fair about things. They just kind of cut the shit. Aye, that's where I'm at. So we haven't got a manager, guys. Yay. It's 12th of May and we sacked Michael Beale. Actually, my favourite moment of the season was when we sacked Michael Beale because I've never seen a manager so unceremoniously sacked. Like the statement basically went, he's left. Like he's gone. He's gone. Don't say out. We've made a mistake. We've made a mistake. Soz. But we do need a manager. And look, ultimately, there's going to be a lot of people listening to this and going, "Oh, it's so depressing and sad." But like, it's a season review. A week after like the most like meh and disappointing season that was self-destructive in ages. So it is what it is. There is still things to be positive. We haven't completely self-destructed and got relegated. There's still some very good players in there who we've mentioned previously, like Job. Hopefully like Ballard and whatnot stay around. As we've said it continuously over the past few weeks, in the sort of show reviews, this is a really easy fix if they learn the mistakes. And one of those big key things they need to do is get a manager in. It looks in many ways, shape, size, and form, Brad, that it's like going to be a European manager, shall we say? You've got, Will Stills up there, Bo Svensson, and René Maric has been mentioned, and they seem to be the names that are flying about with occasionally like the guy from Preston randomly going down in the odds, but I think they're going to deviate away from British manager. But given the choice, realistically, who do you want it to be?
I'm still aboard the Still train. Still aboard the Still. I don't know too much about the other ones. And if anything, at least we can always say at least he was a Twitter sensation for 25 games when he didn't have a coaching badge.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'd personally go for Will Still. If we are going to deviate away from these been there, done that type managers. And I think a lot of the fans will be on board with that, if I'm honest.
I just hope it's a manager that the first and foremost, or a head coach that they listen to in the first instance and take some advice from, because I don't feel like they've done that with previous managers. And to be fair, I'll probably include Michael Beale in that as well, because he did have a January window and we brought in young kids. I think quite clearly a lot of them would have preferred to have a bit of experience in there. So I think first and foremost, I hope it's someone that they listen to. I don't want them to completely smash the model and stop buying young players with resale value. I think that makes a lot of sense. It's not exciting always, but I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think you saw what that can do when you got experience like we did, not the season just gone, but the season we made the playoffs in the championship, when you had, the spine of the team was good experience, littered with really good, young, talented players. You can quite evidently see it has got value, part of that model. And you can have 70% good, young, hungry players with a spine of a really experienced team that can lead them when the going gets tough. So I hope it is a manager that can, in the same way that Mowbray did, kind of like develop that youth and let that youth play freely and let that youth enjoy playing their football and not be scared and not be fearful. And I think it would be really important to have a manager that understands not just English football, but also understands European football. We have a lot of players from Europe, and I think it's a little bit stupid to not do that. So I think for me, the one that ticks the box is 100% René Maric. I think it's a very big risk based on the fact he's never been a head coach before, but it's a very big reward if it works well. And the other options are all going to be a risk anyway. Any manager is a risk. So for me, it would be Maric for the sheer fact that I think he ticks a lot of boxes for me. And if you could get a Kieran McKenna kind of appointment where you've got the next Jurgen Klopp or whatever, or like next Kieran McKenna, and he'd be brilliant. Or you could have a manager that's, nowhere near that, and you've kind of missed the mark a bit. But I can get behind that kind of appointment. So for me, I wouldn't be too disappointed with Will Still. But René Maric gets ahead for me on the sheer fact that he hasn't done a high performance podcast with Jake Humphrey. Ross, where would you prefer us to go?
They're all much of a muchness, but I'm on the opposite side where I think we need someone who's at least coached at a decent level for a season or a few seasons. You know what I mean? And
so you'd like Michael Beale back?
No, I mean who's not stunk the place out everywhere they've been is a good start. So yeah, I think Will Still's the main one, and I think there would be more alarm bells if we didn't bring Will Still in, because they all believed he was coming when they sacked Mowbray. The money put them off, and now they don't need to spend the money. So if he doesn't come now, then what the fuck have they been doing for the last 6 months when they've been speaking to her or wanting them? But it's interesting, this link from, is it the Danish guy you mentioned before that came out this morning?
Bo Svensson.
Yeah, he did all right, didn't he, in the German league? He got a team from 19th, I think, to 7th or something like that, which is, do you know what, that's high performance culture. It's an obsession with progression. That's what that is. So, but yeah, again, it's somebody who's coached at a top level in Europe. So I could be behind that. But it doesn't really matter who they get in, I don't think, unless the transfer policy, as you mentioned, is tweaked. But so I think it'll be a much of a muchness. But I'm hoping it will still, personally.
Leah, leave the final words with you before we go into Euros mode, I think. Are you still on the still train? Are you willing the still on? Or are you going to go for, I haven't got a good kind of thing for that, like a pun, just René Maric?
It's not hard. Even though they've like...
Is it not?
They do it opposite, even though they prove the opposite.
Unless they get the right appointment, it's going to stay nice and floppy.
It isn't. It isn't hard to coach Sunderland. It isn't hard to coach Sunderland because all you need to do is get these young players playing with confidence and freedom. So either one of Still, Marich, or even Bo Svensson will do for me, to be honest. There could be any one of them three, and I'll probably end up coming out happy.
It's not hard. We could get any of those two and I'll end up coming over happy. Okay, cool. Jesus, where have we delved into with this podcast? Formerly so professional.
One thing I would say though, Graham, is the caveat to all of this is they need to be able to bring their own men in as coaches. Like, I'm sorry, but it's time for Dodds and Proctor. In my opinion, if they're serious, they've got to be moved on, and they've been there for years now. And if we're serious about moving forward and having a good go at getting promotion to the Premier League, then we've got to move on with the times, and we're not going to attract the best around if they can't bring their own staff in. It's naive to think so.
I kind of agree with that, to be honest. But right, okay. Brad, do you want to take us out since you started us and your signal seems to be better? And if it breaks, I'll just leave it in so people can see that I wasn't just tugging it back off you, for fuck's sake.
Hard and tugging.
Fuck me. Oh, God. Go on.
Yeah. Well, the season's done, isn't it? And thankfully, the podcast is for this season. Just before I go, I want to just end on a more somber note. We've lost a good friend of the podcast, Jack, recently. So again, want to send out my condolences and love and strength to all of his family. But this season as well was a difficult one for me, and I just want to say thank you to you guys and all the listeners. So obviously this season I lost my granddad, and it's the first time I'll have finished the season not having my granddad around. He was a big part of why I'm a Sunderland fan. So yeah, I just want to thank everyone, Graham, Dave, Lee, Ross, every single listener for sending love and supporting me when I lost my granddad as well. Because that has been and made this season more difficult. What I will say is, when he did pass away, we still had Tony Mowbray in charge, and we did look quite good. So he died knowing Sunderland was still playing good football. So there's a little positive for you there, Granda. But obviously I lost Charlie Hurley as well. Just been a bit of a poor season all around, but we will be back, won't we? And like Graham said, we're gonna do a bit on the Euros, I hope. And Southgate can still turn us all on until ultimately we get knocked out against Hungary in the semi-finals when Harry Styles scores a last-minute winner. That would just be fantastic, wouldn't it, really?
No.
But yeah, lads, thank you again for a season of laughs. When it has been difficult, I think we've managed to at least make the best of it and cheer each other up. And we've had some great messages as well from people on the message boards and messages to the podcast. And their messages do mean a lot to me personally, but I know they mean a lot to us all. Just we do this for you guys, not just for each other. It is a laugh, but we do it because we genuinely care about Sunderland, and we know how much joy it can bring to people who maybe haven't got a close-knit friends to have the same chat with. And yeah, I'm sure we will be back stronger than ever, both on and off the field. But gents, have a great summer. Come on, England.
I echo all of that, apart from the fact I just do it for my own ego, no one else. That's why I'm here. So if you don't like it, you're just damaging my ego. So like you wouldn't want to do that to someone. But on a serious note, I hope everything Brad says, look, we enjoy it. If other people enjoy it, that's class. If they don't, I genuinely don't give a fuck. But we still continue to do it. We're still going to come back. We've all renewed. We're all idiots. We all love Sunderland. We haven't really got choice in the matter. Away the lads and England.